Greetings, everyone. I hope all of you and your families are doing well. As many of you would know, Mobility Outlook was launched in April this year as India's most holistic platform to cover the mobility ecosystem with focus across all mobility verticals. Our platform is built on three verticals: content, intelligence, and events. We have built some very interesting IPs over the last few months, and this is yet another attempt at bringing to the discussion table two extremely critical and complex subjects that are safety and security. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to have with us two luminaries of the mobility sector joining us today in this inaugural session of our virtual conference focused on making mobility safe and secure. Dr. Seshu Bhagavathula is currently the director of the board and advisor to the management at Volta Trucks and strategic advisor for Jebsen Capital. We can't thank you enough, Dr. Bhagavathula, for making time to be part of this important conference. We truly appreciate your support.
Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Prashanth Doreswamy, country head Continental India and managing director Continental Automotive Components India. Prashanth has been for many years one of the strongest voices in the Indian industry, and we are excited to hear your thoughts today on the subject and importance of safety-driven automotive security. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, electric mobility, assisted or automotive driving, and connectivity are making automotive systems ever more complex and networked. A secured architecture today is a lead consideration in vehicle designs. Security must ensure that safety cannot be compromised. Technical innovations such as artificial intelligence, connectivity, electrification, and big data are enabling the industry to develop new mobility products and services. But as system complexity increases, in addition to the growth of function automation, safety and security are becoming ever more important. No manufacturer today can afford to ignore safety and security during vehicle development and production. Clearly, introduction of new technologies will bring new challenges as they must be integrated quickly into existing and new upcoming products. We've seen how both traditional car makers and new market players are breaking the usual development life cycle by defining fresh business models that introduce cutting-edge technologies into production. From a safety and security perspective, there is a definite need to look at various standards at play, be it the evolution of functional safety standards, ISO 26262, the safety of the intended functionality, or even the new ISO SE 21434 automotive cybersecurity standard. Over-the-air updates, infotainment, and the integration of mobile devices and cloud-based services helps every connected vehicle offer state-of-the-art safety, autonomy, and driver comfort. As vehicles get further connected with electronic content increasing in them, it is necessary to engineer and ensure robust cybersecurity measures into all aspects of the vehicle's construction to protect critical features and backend networks from cyber attacks. This conference, ladies and gentlemen, will attempt to address these subjects in details. Right after this inaugural session, we would be releasing an interesting study titled Safety Behavior of Indian Consumers and Their Perception About Vehicle Security. We have received an overwhelming response to this study with participation of over 2.7 lakh people from across the country. The responses have been validated by our partners, Frost & Sullivan, and we have Mr. Kaushik Madhavan, Vice President Mobility at Frost & Sullivan South Asia, who will present the findings to you shortly. Following that, we have lined up a technical session that will see experts from 4 companies: Infineon, LDRA, ETAS, and Here Technologies. I would like to welcome to our conference Ms. Lalita Diksangi, Senior Staff Engineer Application at Infineon Technologies India, Mr. Srikanth Satyanarayan, Senior Technical Manager, LDRA India, Mr. Khushwan Power, he is the Head of Cybersecurity Solutions Mobility for Regional Market India at ETAS Automotive, and Mr. Animesh Kumar Sahai, Head of Customers India and Southeast Asia at Here Technologies. Finally, we also have an exciting panel that will deliberate on the subject of safety-driven automotive security, decoding the industry's approach. This discussion will be led by Mr. Praveen Sashidharan, partner at Deloitte India, who would be leading this discussion as the moderator. And our other panelists include Mr. Sivakumar Songapan from Vistion, Mr. Anandakrishnan from Harman India, Mr. Satish Sundareshan from Electrobit, and Ms. Ujjwala Kale from ARAI. Ladies and gentlemen, as an electronics-driven revolution fast reshapes the automotive industry, how are safety and security getting intertwined? That is the basic question we are posing today into this conference. I welcome each one of you to this program and hope you would have enough to take back to your colleagues and teams at the end of it. Please do participate actively and keep posting your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens, and we shall try and accommodate as many questions as possible through the day's proceedings. Thank you once again. Welcome to Making Mobility Safe and Secure. Over to you, DT.
Thank you so much, Dipanshu, for setting up the context and pointing out some important issues on this journey of making mobility safer and secure. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Seshu Bhagavathula, Director, Volta Trucks. He is currently the Director of the Board and Advisor to the Management at Volta Trucks and Strategic Advisor for Jebsen Capital. Earlier, he was the CTO and President, New Technologies and Business Initiatives at Ashok Leyland, responsible for group-wide R&D and technologies. Welcome to the conference, sir. I would like to welcome to.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just put on a presentation. Yes. So just give me one more second. There seems to be some issue here. So can you see my screen now?
Not yet, Dr. Bhagavathula.
Just give me one more second. Zoom and share. Okay, I seem to have a small issue with that, but one more second. Screen, yes. So no, it doesn't look like it works, but it's okay.
We can see your screen for sure. The presentation isn't coming up yet.
Is not coming up as yet. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. So because I'm actually a little bit constrained of being in a new place, I have to do lots of new things here. I hope at least the network works today. Now, there was no big presentation that I wanted to show you anywhere. I normally you spend a lot of time putting lots of slides just to keep yourself on the track, but then you may be missing the red line in the presentation. So this was a title I wanted to show, nothing more. But today's title is more or less given by the people here. So safety-driven automotive security. This is safety and security put in one sentence. Now we'll have to now start defining what is safety and what is security, right? Safety in an automotive context is all about, keeping the passengers, the driver, people who sit inside the vehicle safe. And also, naturally, the object itself has to be kept safe, which is the vehicle that you're sitting in. So what do you do? And how do you do is something we spend a lot of time on. But then comes the factor security. Now, security seems to be, why do you actually require security when you're driving a vehicle? Now, that's because your vehicle is no more a standalone vehicle that's just driving on a highway, which was the case, by the way, in 70s and 80s. But then things started changing as we have seen a revolution in the electronic industry of chips, control units becoming cheaper and cheaper. So you could actually do quite a bit of scaling up of electronic control units. Now, as the speeds have gone up, the needs of the people to reach places has gone up, and then came the comfort. You needed much bigger seats. You needed seats that actually conform to the way you sit. So the needs have grown. So the competition has come in, and they've put in lots of systems. And one day, someone said, "I just want to know what the condition of a road is." And it's not easy to get this information from. Initially, people tried to put a system in place that would look in front and give you the information. So, but still, the car is not connected. It's just showing something. It's throwing a radar signal and observing a road condition and sending the signal back, and you were still all right. But then one day you said, you always have to go to new places. And they said, you need map information. And suddenly you could not keep all the maps inside the car, although the original versions had all the maps inside the car. You remember the first Bosch systems in the world, and then came the CDs, and the CDs became actually quite old within a short time. Now, you always required some kind of an update. It became so much because cities were changing, the roads were changing. Now, in today's presentation or talk, I would like also to concentrate on my own career, on what all I have gone through. When I joined Daimler-Benz as a young engineer in the late 80s, early 90s in Stuttgart, in Ulm, the town where Albert Einstein was born, I was given a project because I was a PhD in high frequency technology and radars. They said, Seshu, you know what? Why don't you look at, can we measure, can we know if there's a snow on the road? Then we built those big radar systems that were really, really big. And then the problem was, radar was sitting at a low height. The cars are not tall, right? So, and then the grazing angle was so flat that very little signal was coming back. But then as we increased the frequency and started looking at more sensitive signals, we observed that there was a signal that's always coming back from a car in front of us. So actually the radar was hitting the snow or the road and then deflecting to a car in front, and then that car was sending the signal back to us. Then one of my colleagues said, I can also measure the distance from the other car to you. And this probably was the origin of what we call today the distance warning radar sensors. Now, this was actually a side effect. The initial effect was actually to measure the snow. Now you see, but again, coming back to the point, now the car was still standalone, but over the time we know that cars are no more standalone vehicles. They're now completely connected. Today, if you look at a car, take a BMW 7 Series or a Mercedes S-Class or that level, you have more than 100 electronic control units. Now that's where actually things start getting complicated. Now, safety actually means, let's look at some fundamental definitions. Now, let's say all these are doing certain functions, and they're all busy assessing data, collecting information and working on the information and giving the result back. That's a decision back to the driver today, right? The driver says, all the four wheels are not rotating at the same speed. Is information. Now, what can driver do with it? He can't do anything at all. So what now happens is that this decision is given to another controller that takes a decision saying that, well, the road seems to be a different one. Let's do something. So it does something against it, and you have got ABS and electronic stability programs and whatever. Now, these 100 electronic control units today offer what we call the automotive safety. We are not yet with the security. We are talking right now about the safety. Now, on a top logical level, what are these supposed to do? There's a pre-crash. So that means, let's see, there are three things that we could look at. One is a pre-crash, and at the time of the crash and post-crash. All these 100 electronic control units and plus, naturally 100 plus, they're supposed to be actually doing most of the work on the pre-crash so that a crash does not take place. Now, that's how on the top level, top people think and take a decision on how should an architecture look like. Now, if a radar is giving you continuous information about the distance of the car in front of you, so you know the relative distance all the time, then you basically can almost avoid 99.999% of the accident, provided that your brake works. The distance is correct, right? For some reason or the other, now you're unable to hold to the distance because someone else comes from the right or the left into your view so fast that your radar has no chance to detect it. And then the brake has to work in a last second, in a microsecond. So pre-crash is all about actually discussing the features, discussing about the scenarios, and telling the electronics beforehand to avoid the crash. Pre-crash is all about understanding the situation of the vehicle at any given time. Now, at some point or the other, for whatever reason, it becomes inevitable to avoid a crash. Now, this is where lots of preparation takes place in a premium vehicle. Now, what happens is then in some cases, your seat belt starts actually becoming ready for an imminent crash. It does not let you move to the front. You know, there are certain things that actually, these are called preparatory. The car is actually preparing itself for a frontal or side collision. Now, once the accident happens, there's a post-crash. Now, first thing is not to have an accident. Second one is to minimize the impact of the crash, of the accident. And third one is how fast can the help come? Assessing the situation inside a vehicle is equally important. Now, first, some of these cars actually test, is someone available still to speak? Now, condition of the passengers, the occupants inside, is one of the most important things that happens in the post-crash scenario. In some cases, advanced sensors, you also know the blood group of the people. I'm talking about an evolution that has happened from the beginning of 90s to today. In fact, I have been myself part of a lot of these developments, or I was interacting with the teams that were developing them. So that's a reason that you could see the evolution. I was working for Mercedes-Benz, but it's not related only to Mercedes-Benz. Now, most of the car companies are concentrating on these today. Now, post-crash was equally an important thing because you cannot always avoid accidents. So post-crash was all about identifying the situation inside the vehicle, condition of the passengers, occupants, and also sending lots of information to nearby help centers, like where did the accident take place? Is there a hospital nearby? Imagine you need to have a telephone number for a hospital available in the database somewhere. I'm talking about those days where you had to keep all this information inside a vehicle. Today, you have it easier, not that easy, but easier than in those days. Now then, the geocoded, geolocation and a map matching information given to a call center, and the call center then calls up the car. We had introduced a SIM card with the base call service in those days, and the call center called you up and then said, can you talk? If you couldn't talk, then there was a message to a nearby help station. There was a helicopter or whatever possible that flew down to the highway, picked you up, and whatever that happened. Now, each of these accidents, engineers went there to study how to reduce the time. Pre-crash, at the time of crash, post-crash, and all these 100 electronic control units working. Now, but that's just one of the classifications. You could also classify safety as active safety and passive safety. This is probably, there are some people who use the vocabulary preliminary safety and secondary safety. Now, active safety is all about changing the parameters of the vehicle. And a passive safety is all about that making things, like your seat belts and so on. These belong part of the passive safety. But active safety is about electronic, braking systems and ABSs and stability programs and so on. Now, we have lots of standards. Meanwhile, people talk about ISO 26262, the functional safety. Now, functional safety is all about getting the function that is that's intended to do certain functions, or it's what I call the SOTIF, safety of the intended functionality. That's very important. Now it becomes more a logical layer of working. Now the logical layer has to be defined so that at the controller level, the programs are correspondingly written with the code. Now, once you talk of this safety part, now, as we know that the cars are now networked with outside world. Let's imagine a generic system where you have infotainment that's connected to outside world. Now you've got map information coming from another source, and you also have so-called backend. Now, backend is all about the OEM-related backend, which is controlled by the OEM himself. But you know very well, meanwhile, that you also bring your own mobile telephone, or you bring your own equipment. You connect yourself through Bluetooth, you connect yourself through wireless LAN or internet, and you then start connecting yourself to the networks that you know. Now, authenticity of these networks is not very well known at any given time. Now, that's where slowly you start looking at the so-called security part. Now, simple definition of security is, I think you probably could take most of the vocabulary from the computer language, because inside the car, you also have today computers. There are little different computers, but they're equally powerful computers, and they require, they have connection to the outside world. Now, in the security, we may have to look at, these are cyber systems. They're not physical. It's information coming through. Someone else is actually accessing or sending the information into the car. You may have seen, maybe in 2015, there are two guys, Mr. Miller and Valasek. They've actually shown the world in real time. It was actually transmitted live across the world on how to take over a car in real time. But the initial one is actually to show the potential threat. What they did was actually to put an electronic control unit inside the car that was connected to, I think, OBD2 or somewhere. But then basically, the network did not identify it's a foreign thing sitting inside, and it started taking over one after one functions. It has and they have literally, the person sitting inside, you could see how he was saying, I didn't want this blazer to go on level 4, and it was blowing air onto him, and it switched on the heater, and he was unable to do anything. It switched on the wiper, and they have actually 2 years later, it was actually Jeep Cherokee through Uconnect. Uconnect is basically nothing but using a telephone. It's like a GM OnStar. It gives lots of services, and so Uconnect was similar to that. Later on, naturally, you can imagine Jeep Cherokee has sent a patch immediately and corrected it. But in hackers or in cybersecurity vocabulary, your system is as safe as until it is hacked. So that means it's you think that the system is safe enough until someone hacks it. Then you start adapting it. Then it hacks it again. It gets hacked again, and then it's like it seems to be like a catch-22 situation, that you all the time, you can only be safe as long as it is safe, and until someone hacks it. That's what the computer people talk about. Now, in the car, in the vehicle industry, we hope that it is not the case. But I can tell you, today, we are not yet there because of so many cars that already have advanced sensors that are connected to the outside networks that have not yet been totally configured for such threats. So today, it is definitely possible for vehicle or set of vehicles, or probably hundreds of vehicles at any given time, to be taken over by something outside of the vehicle and can be controlled. Now, you can imagine a scenario of hundreds of vehicles being taken over by power outside of the vehicle and controlled by it or them. Now, with the help of, I can imagine, sponsored, rich, entities, such a thing is definitely imaginable and possible today. So now, but then how do we actually go about securing this? Is on the one side, we have looked at the safety part. By the way, just to give you the future part of it, in the safety part, we talk about autonomous systems, level 1, level 2, level 3, and the last one is supposed to be where there is no driver, and there are only passengers, and the car actually, or the vehicle, drives on its own as safe as possible and brings you to wherever you intend to go. Now, in such a scenario, you can imagine if someone else controls it. Now, level 4, level 5 automation is still a long way, but even at level 2 and level 3, it is already possible for a vehicle to behave erratically. Now, let's look at what happens on architecture level. Now, there have already been lots of systems put against such a threat from outside. Today, in the 80s, we had first time the CAN bus coming in. Everything was on the CAN bus. Everything was talking, everything was listening. Now, we said over the time, we require some kind of a sub-networks. So not all of them are put on the same network. Now you've got infotainment bus, then you got a safety critical bus, and you got whatever. And we said not all of them can talk to each other just like that. There were times that infotainment naturally could not just speak to brake pedal software, so to say, right? But then it's still possible. Typically, it seems the LTE connection or 4G or whatever connection you have seems to be the one. Again, coming to definition point of view, you have a long-range threat and you've got a mid-range threat. You've got a near-range threat. The near-range threat is someone puts something into your car, onto the OBD2 sensor or somewhere, or your internet sensor, your connectors, what do you have, right? USB, for example. Now, that's a near physical range threat. The medium one is still it's wireless, like a Bluetooth, right? Like a wireless LAN, but with the vicinity. The long range ones are considered to be the more dangerous ones, which use 4G, LTEs, and other DSRCs, and others to get into your vehicle. Now, as I said, as we started speaking about the architectural issues, now you got the whole network now, classified into sub-networks, and then I remember myself working on some of those gateways. We put gateways. Now, these gateways were supposed to actually identify who is to pull. They have certain rule engines put inside these gateways. Now, they identify who's allowed to talk, who's not allowed to talk, and where is the signal coming from, and so on. These are rule engines that are put in there. So there has been a lot of security put in through those gateways. There are many, many other methods people use already, but then let's get to the security part. Now, today I am watching different philosophies emerging from different parts of the world based on their local needs, based on certain developments that are related to a particular society. America tends to be different than Europe, and Japan tends to be different from others. And those are leading countries. They're following fast follower countries, and India happens to be not yet in the prime league, but it's a matter of time. Now, imagine if I were to say to you that you can buy a big premium car that has all the safety functions, but imagine, you can also buy a normal car that does not have so many safety functions. But such a definition cannot be used for security. You cannot sell a car saying that you buy a car that's half secure than a bigger one. No one buys your car anymore. Now, in the safety, you still could actually differentiate to less level of safety to higher amount of safety, but in security, you cannot do such a thing. Now, this changes actually the paradigm of vehicle selling once security comes into equation. Now, let's go back to security part. Now, I've been watching developments happening at various OEMs on how they are looking at the security part. Now, in the security level, you're looking at low-level component security, you're looking at system-level security, and you're looking at, so to say, the OSI layer, top layers of security, where on the lowest layer, the lowest layer is basically preparing itself for a few things. One of them is, in the computer language, we talk of spoofing. We talk of technologies where it imitates someone else. It basically sends you. What are the vocabulary people use? There are, one of them is the sniffing part. Exactly. Now, there is a system that actually gets into your network, and it sniffs. Sniffing itself does not do much, no threat, but it actually starts identifying how are the electronic control units sending information. What are the IDs that they use? Now, sniffing is typically a prelude or something that happens before an attack. The second one is a denial of service. Denial of service is basically that you make a system not available any longer by confusing the system or by confusing the upper layers, saying that there is an error happening there, and also telling the system itself that you are not functioning very well. So what the system then does is shut itself off. This is a simple explanation of the denial of service. Denial of service happens in most cases, as you saw with these two gentlemen who are concerned. No more gentlemen after that, but they became again gentlemen, saying that ours was just to show what is possible. But you saw they were friendly people, but denial of service never happens normally from a friendly attack. Now, denial of service is always the ultimate form of shutting down the services. Now, imagine a brake not working any longer, right? It's not going to be funny any longer sitting such a car. Spoofing, that people talk about, spoofing is all about. There are two kinds of ones. One is that the victim. The victim in the sense of the issue that is affected says it pretends to be that the attacker becomes a victim, so to say. The attacker, he knows by sniffing all the information. He says, okay, now I know how to act, and start replaying. It keeps on sending the same information it knows, and it starts getting the attention from the network. This arbitrary, and it always wins because it says, I need attention. And suddenly, this is a replay. But then the masquerade ones are the ones where once this happens, they create their own messages, right? So now, in a real life automotive scenario, we will have to look at threat models. The threat models probably are the ones. This is basically, people talk about the model-based ones. Let me just tell you guys, models. There are these attack surfaces. Attack surfaces are typically the ones that the interfaces to the outside world. Now, as I said, at the lower level, the code itself is now being written for identifying who is allowed to send information, who is allowed to write information. Now, when I say read and write, you will have to understand in a car, in a vehicle, there are lots of things that are written, there are lots of things that are sent, read. Now, written in the sense, for example, an information comes from outside, from a map, and it's written inside some kind of a electronic control unit for a short time. This is used to calculate a lot of other information like route and so on. Now you see there is now a steering wheel writes information to the wheels. A brake pedal actually gets information from someone else to apply a brake. Now, so there's a lot of readers and writers inside this. Now, what typically happens is, now when someone sends information to the brake pedal should know the one who sent the information is allowed to send the information, and it also should know it is the right one to send information. Authentication authorization. Now, people talk about this quite a lot. Now, who is allowed to write, who's allowed to read, and the identity and the authentication of the person. Now, that means at a very low level, probably you will have to restrict yourself to identifying, can I deny a signal that's not allowed to come to me? Now, on another level, on the top level, the mid-level, for example, you take a LiDAR system or a radar system or a camera system. Now, a radar system should not give a wrong range information. That means the radar on the system level should be programmed in such a way that it has to have a proofing system that actually identifies this particular signal is actually according to, there is some noise coming in. It is actually not originated from where it's intended to. Now, this is where I think most of the work is happening. Coming back again to our logical layers. Now, I guess end-to-end security, which has to consider all kinds of mobile telecommunication technologies like 4Gs and LTEs, DSRCs. Then we talk of services that come from third-party providers when you come inside the car with your own mobile telephone and connecting it through 4Gs and others. Now, and I also observe a bigger initiative happening on developing their own, I'm talking about OEMs, developing their own operating systems. Now, operating systems are owned in future by the OEMs, it looks like. For example, we have seen announcements coming from Mercedes-Benz. We've seen announcements coming from Volkswagen. And I'm sure Prashanth will talk about in his Continental presentation about their own future operating systems, I'm sure. The initiative is basically meant to control the security part better than in the past. Now, there must be probably, some kind of, a secure development cycle. Now, in automotive security language, people use this word called the defense in depth. Defense in depth is about, for example, it was an old military, I'm sure vocabulary. If the front line was breached, the rest was all easy. So defense in depth is all about, building second line, third line, and fourth line defenses. So fourth line being at the component level, and second layer being system level. And I can imagine the periphery layer is all about the firewalls, that actually encompass your overall, ecosystem, for vehicle and for the users. Now, this defense in depth, there are philosophies that are used based on risk assessment. Now, it's basically, as I said, threat models. You need to be able to model all the threats as well as possible. Then you can do the risk assessment. That is, then you then go for a risk audit and check all the systems for if they comply to the risk audit that you've done. Now, again, some of them need to understand, am I working? A system always has to know that it's working, or it has to know that it is not working, or it's partially working. Now, imagine if a system does not know its state, then security is compromised. Now, while we go into the details of it, Now, as I said, operating systems are the ones that OEMs now tend to spend a lot of time on. I also see a cooperation happening between all the ecosystem or the value chain providers or actors that are in the value chain on agreeing to a common set of standards to be able to identify the intrusion. Now, using another word, intrusion detection systems, we all know. I mean, intrusion detection systems is all about knowing, again, authentication and authorization. Is there someone coming from outside that is not allowed to be inside? That means you have, but very often what typically happens is the outside one acts like someone is from inside. So that means you will have to look at characteristics of someone acting a little different than normal. So I can imagine there must be algorithms. I can probably imagine pattern matching algorithms used to identify is there an intrusion. Now it gets more and more complicated. Neither I am an expert and nor prepared for today's presentation. I guess that we must be looking at 45 minutes already. Yes. So I would say two more words and then leave for some room for questions and answers. Now, one more time, automotive safety and security are intricately coupled. Safety of the passengers cannot be guaranteed until security is taken care of, and security as it is today does not exist in the level that we require, and it looks like today more and more sensors are coming into the vehicle without as yet completely secured based on a security philosophy. What we are observing right now is a world where we know the threat, we know the consequences, we are working towards it. Far from it, we are already potentially in a stage for threats. Why we do not see probably threats on a large scale is because it's unfortunate, but it's fortunate at the same time, is because we're all good people, majority of us good people. I think that's where, I mean, imagine you could typically already take over vehicles in many cases with the large financial backing of attackers. And my observation today is we, I mean, they go in hand. Level 2, level 3 automation is something that you're already seeing in most of the vehicles. I think in about a year or two, we should be able to get to some amount of first level of standardization in the security. Safety part is much more advanced. You already can in the labs, on the experimental level. When I say experimental level, these can be used. You typically can already have a level 4 automation with the technology available today. Why don't we see them is basically because the legislation, the law is not yet ready. In case of an accident, who is responsible for an accident is not yet known, in which condition, because it's not very often easy to identify who is at fault. So it's not the technology for safety that's restricting us to become level 4 world, but it's a legislation. I mean, when I say level 4 is already possible, it is possible, but again, you still probably will see an accident happening 1 in a million case. Are we ready to accept that? The legislation, as I said, is not yet ready. But on the safety side, one more time, is that we are very advanced. On the security side, we're just beginning. That's with that, I close my talk for today. Thank you very much for listening. Open for discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your views and deep understanding about the subject. Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Prashanth Doreswamy, Country Head, Continental India and Managing Director, Continental Automotive Components, for his keynote address.
Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased to be part of this event. Dipanshu, thank you so much for this opportunity. And also very pleased to be sharing this platform with an eminent personality like Dr. Bhagavathula. I think he has covered most of the items what I wanted to speak. For anybody speaking after Dr. Bhagavathula is always a challenge. Yeah, let me see how much I can do this justice. Right now, I think we are witnessing the biggest transformation process last 2 years, especially one that is disruptive in nature to some extent in the history of automobile. I think we all know earlier cars were purely mechanical, right? We first started adding electronics to this mechanical equipment in 80s, and with electronics came software. So this has meant some enormous changes, which you see eating us short. I think electronics is the fuel that powers the current developments. It's driving force behind the transformation process in terms of functions, and also technology enables functions, and for functions to be successful, they need to be accepted by customers as well, right? So that is something we should not forget. We should keep that in mind. And if you look at the disruptions which are happening in the automotive space, we all know it's autonomous, electrified, connected. I think autonomous driving is more complex than what we all hear and see, because at least we need to decide between assisted, automated, and the third stage called autonomous driving. Yeah. Assisted driving is more precipitated by safety, while others, that's the automated and the autonomous, are more of a convenience features. Talking about connectivity to cloud, we all want the functions that we enjoy at home, that we see as completely everyday features of our office, that we have on our smartphones, and we want to be able to in our cars as well. So we aren't there yet. Why do I say this? We definitely not there when it comes to settings which these functions are to be safe. The reason behind many accidents these days, yeah, alternate drive systems are more pushed by not pushed by consumers, rather it's pushed by regulations and fundamentally different from the other two, which are more safety and security oriented when it comes to safe autonomous driving. Yeah, so we need to make a distinction between this autonomous driving and connectivity, which are sort of an evolutionary in nature, and the alternate drive systems, which are disruptive in nature. So I think talking about safety, I think India has been making stride towards automotive safety in last few years. We all have seen, I think the government has launched various programs and mandates in the last few years. For example, if I have to talk about ABS, now it's mandatory on two-wheelers above 125 cc, and also 100% of the cars. Earlier in March 2021, mandated airbags for the passenger seated in different vehicle as well. So effective 1st of April, and for the older models from 31st of August 2021. Unfortunately, it's deferred now due to COVID to 31st of December 2021. Yeah, also in August 2021, our Union Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, urged all automakers in India to offer at least 6 airbags as a standard on all variants of each model they produce. Yeah. So there are several policies being considered by the Indian government that is working to make electronic stability control, yeah, and also autonomous emergency brake sort of a mandatory in 2023-2024. So there is a strong focus towards making Indian roads safer. So in terms of policy, I think we are seeing a positive signs for safety in India, which is great. The government initiatives are playing a crucial role in increasing awareness about safety features in India. I think programs like Global NCAP will play a key role too in the uptake of safety technologies. Regarding security of the vehicle, I think we would need stricter norms when we talk about India and standardization in the coming years. But we are on the right track. The government has already proposed the draft PDP bill to protection on the personal data. Yeah, it aims to create a sort of a data protection authority of India that will be responsible for protecting the interests of data principles, preventing misuse of this personal data, and also sort of ensuring compliance with the new law. We hope to see a much more initiatives in the area of security. I think a comprehensive approach which involves the three pillars: prevent, understand, and respond. Here, I think is the need of the hour when you talk about security. I think innovation at the intersection of hardware and software. Yeah, the vehicle of tomorrow, certainly we all know, will be autonomous. If as far as India is concerned, if it is not autonomous, at least it will be assisted, connected, and electric, increasing the role of software by 2026. I think we see the car will have nearly about 1 billion lines of code. Already, as we speak now in 2021, an average car in some of the developed countries like Europe, it has already had about 200 million lines of code, and we are moving towards about 1 billion lines of code. That's the influence of software which you see in the coming days. So this will see changes in both hardware and software. To fulfill the changing needs, I think the vehicle architecture Dr. Bhagavathula spoke about also needs to transform. The future electrical electronics architecture must be a sort of a center in the robust software architectures to drive a vital function, and also it need to be service-oriented setup to support this function. We also see some of the functions already going to the cloud. I think to drive this, a some number of high-performing computers, or so-called HPCs, or servers, provide the capabilities for the necessary functional centralization. Yeah. So, for instance, the body HPC is an excellent host for connected services, serving as a sort of a central data node in the vehicle, and also connecting to the outside world, either through a gateway or through sort of telematics control unit, or through a sort of an intelligent antenna module. So HPC concept can be divided into sort of a 4 application areas within the vehicle. One is talked about body HPC, which regulates sort of a data streams in the vehicles and serves as an intelligent interface to the internet. Cyber security and also the communication. The second could be the cockpit HPC, what you see inside, which interacts with the driver. The autonomous driving version of the HPC, more on the autonomous side. And the fourth is the safety HPC, which is on the chassis side. I think the fourth application also aims to bridge the gap between a bodily domain and a sort of an autonomous driving, and offer sort of a functional safety for a high-level ASIL. ASIL stands for Automotive Safety Integrity Levels. I think the HPC meets the critical requirements such as the consistent hardware-software separation, which Dr. Bhagavathula spoke about, which one of our subsidiary, which is Electrobit, is also helping us through this application of adaptive Autosar. And also in terms of virtualization, functional safety, the need for new business models, and the integration of multiple software sources. I think if you look at this, consumer expectations also increasing. Yeah, I very briefly talked about at the start. Convenience and safety have become sort of 2 of the most critical parameters in vehicle buying decisions. Yeah, people want convenient and safe driving experiences that are tailored to their individual preferences. In other words, vehicles are transforming from a means of a transportation to a sort of a mobile living spaces. Yeah, because more and more we start spending time inside the car. The consumer's car buying decisions are no more driven by how much the engine power is, rather it's driven by user experience. This because the former key differentiators such as the horsepower becomes less relevant, less and less relevant today, with cars also moving towards electrification. You could say that user experience is the new horsepower. Yeah? Consumers look for experiences instead of features which create sort of ease and joy of use. The amount of time one spends today inside a vehicle demands very high level of what you call this human mission integration that makes the driving experience much more comfortable and safer. You are seeing, for example, the instrument clusters. Earlier days used to be small. Today, we already started seeing about what we call as pillar-to-pillar displays. So the in-car HMI currently is a combination of what you call as the intelligent information management, design excellence, and also sort of a fascinating user experiences it creates. I think it has made in-vehicle experience much more connected, informed, and also sort of an integrated. Yeah. So apart from this, if I talk about ADAS, I think it has started to gain significant prominence globally. In India, though ADAS is in the nascent stages, I think it takes very long time, because when you talk about ADAS, it's not a car alone being equipped and ready. It also needs to be the ecosystem, the driver discipline, the signaling, the signboards, everything needs to get standardized. Yeah. So from that perspective, I think the immediate need when you talk about ADAS in India is more of the assisted function, which are more safety related. I think the consumers are looking for advanced safety features. That's where you already started in some of the vehicles creeping in India. For example, lane change assist, or even the emergency brake assist. Could be something specific requirements for Indian road conditions like umpara pothole detection. Yeah. So these are some of the alert functions what we see. I think technologies and development that Continental is doing, if I have to give one example, how we are pushing the boundaries of safety, we have something called Vision Zero. What is Vision Zero? Vision Zero means zero fatalities, zero injuries, zero crashes. The purpose is to protect the safety of the vehicle, I think its occupants, also other vehicles, other occupants, road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and also animals, and the infrastructure surrounding the vehicle. This is our definition of safety. It's not alone the personal safety. For instance, last year, we came out with a new product called transparent hood. Transparent hood is a function which makes the area around the hood visible, which is underneath the car, and allows the driver to see the terrain and obstacles that would otherwise not visible today, right? The transparent hood is based on some sort of Continental surround view system. We have a surround view cameras, which consists of 4 satellite cameras and an electronic control unit. An intelligent image processing algorithm reconstructs the image, yeah, below the vehicle and inserts the image exactly into the surround view displayed on the driver. So the transparent hood technology fuses sort of an ultrasonic distance information with the surround view cameras to provide a 3D and a 360-degree around the vehicle perspective, and supports views both near the vehicle as well as in the medium distance. So this is one of the new innovative safety feature which was launched last year, and also we did win CES 2020 Innovation Award for this for this product. And today it's in production with one of the Jaguar Land Rover's platform. So safety and security, I think it's getting sort of intertwined. As we move towards the connected mobility, it opens us to a new threats and vulnerabilities. Yeah. So which Dr. Bhagavathula spoke in very much detail. Yeah. So India's automotive industry is rapidly moving towards this digitalization, and cybersecurity has become a sort of an essential component. Hackers can acquire access to connected cars if they are not secure from a connectivity standpoint. I think vehicles, like any other computer-enabled device, are vulnerable to cybercrime. Hackers may be motivated to get the access into the vehicle system in order to maybe steal the passenger's personal information or to interfere with the vehicle's functionality. Even hackers can misuse commands to a vehicle, making it obey the hacker by overshadowing the driver commands. I think that's the example you just heard from Jeep Grand Cherokee, which happened a couple of years back in US. Yeah. So hackers are capable of deploying commands to control the functioning of the vehicle system. So they also have the potential to manipulate sort of the working of steering, brakes, engine, you name it. So therefore, the protection and privacy of data becomes very, very significant, and it's a concern today. I think the industry conducted safety engineering to protect the environment from malfunctions of a vehicular system. I think, but today the tables have turned around, right? The system needs protection from the environment. The protection of a system is achieved by sort of securing its memory. Booting applications could be, communication interfaces, supporting infrastructures, and also sort of online trust centers for crypto key storages. Yeah. Along with this, sort of a penetration test lab that continuously monitors for the vulnerabilities is also sort of made available. Yeah. So these are some of the developments which you see, which is happening in the cybersecurity. So industry is working on securing the systems, memory, communication, and supporting infrastructure. So if you ask me, what are the three things which we should be looking at, cyber can be tackled in a sort of a broad critical steps. One is prevent. How do we prevent? Make it as odd as possible for attacks. So this is typically, this sort of involves the hardwares, enhanced crypto, embedded security softwares, security networks, and also the secure vehicle architectures. The probability of this security enhancement rises in tandem with the degree of networking as well, and the number of in-vehicle interfaces that it necessitates. Yeah. So hackers are driven by various factors, including their motivation could be data theft, financial gain, and it could be even for prestige. Yeah. So manufacturers need to strengthen all potential attack points and lay down security solutions across multiple levels and the functions. Yeah. This can be made possible by identifying various attack points, understanding the behavior, and designing safety measures to secure the system. Second one, know you are being hacked and how in real time. So this involves some amount of a live monitoring and tracking of the connected vehicles. And the third one is sort of respond. How do you mitigate the damage and minimize the fleet in hours? So this involves software upgrades over the air and a patch management. I think cybercrime is a sort of an asymmetric challenge for all of us today. So when so many things are happening, at the same while the cars are getting more becoming software defined. Yeah. Today, if you talk about mobile phone, it is just having one microprocessor, one display, one operating system. Maybe it has about 7 sensors, maybe weighing about 180, 200 grams, but it travels at 0 kilometers per hour. Whereas when you talk about software, with all these functions in the car, cars have got today about more than 100 microcontrollers, more than 4 displays, multiple of 4 operating systems, hundreds of sensors, weighs about 2000 kgs, and travels at 200 plus kilometers per hour. So in case of mobile phone, faulty software is annoying. Whereas in case of a car, faulty software can be fatal. So that's the challenge which industry today is facing. So if you ask me what is important, certainly the agile leadership. I strongly believe the leadership increasingly depends on being ready for the unthinkable. All of us as leaders have to paint the vision for the future. And also every industry need to understand, a company need to understand what are our core assertions and what hypothesis of how things are going to change. And in our particular case, we are very clear that we have to transform the company from a company that delivered multiple ECUs for vehicles to a company that's going to deliver software in the cloud. I think pace of innovation is only going to accelerate. And second is the subscription model. And you see already Conti recently launched something called Continental Edge in collaboration with AWS. So we also see some of the functions going to cloud. So you as an user you were asking, well, consumers started asking question, why do you pay upfront? I may not use. Whenever I would like to use, I'll take it from the cloud. So that's the thing which is also making it complicated. So I think this also making the sort of pace of challenge is only going to accelerate. And the second, which we briefly talked about, could lead to a sort of a subscription model. So there's a change in the business model altogether. You have the same relationship with the customer, but you can sell more with that sort of a differentiated engagement model. So then how do you get as a leader? I think the ingenuity, the innovation of the organization to help you flush this out. Now we are talking about how do you differentiate and see what are the growth opportunities in the industry. I think industry is going through a digital network effects. That as any network effect, we can't measure our capability by sheer amount of lines of code, how much we add. We need to find out what is that organizing layer which differentiates us from another company. I think the important thing is to really be in control of our destiny by identifying that organizing layer, because everything above and below gets commoditized. So thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. Back to you, Dipanshu.
Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And next up in the segment.
What we'll do, DT, 1 second. What we'll do is we have received quite a few questions, but for the want of time, what I'll do is, with your permission, gentlemen, take one question each, and then we will move to the next session. Sure. So, Prashanth, I'll start with you. There's a question. It's an anonymous question. It's come. Is it expected that all the HPCs for body, chassis, etc., meet the same security integrity level?
Oh, certainly yes. Certainly yes. And this is that sort of an intermediary step. What we are looking at domain HPCs. We talked about 4, and the prediction is maybe 5 years down the line, all this will merge into one computer. So then the need for the security is much more enhanced, I believe.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Prashanth. Dr. Bhagavathula, there's another question which I would like to take to you. In fact, I'd combine 2 questions. Could you please mention an example of how can security affect functional safety? That is one. And can you also explain how to achieve the targeted security and safety level in adaptive Autosar platform? Dr. Bhagavathula?
You can listen to me, right? Yes.
We can listen. We can hear you. Yes.
Can you ask me the question just one more time, please? Sure. One of the, how can functional safety get affected by the security was one of them, right?
That's right.
Okay, now let me answer that first question, by the way. So basically, functional safety till today was concentrated on the safety part. Now, you typically functional safety talks about, what's my status, right? Am I working properly? Am I working partially? Am I invalidated? Whatever. This only talks about its own functionality, but it does not yet have the properties of identifying who is actually talking to me. Now, on a fundamental level, it has to now have additional, so to say, lines of code or additional algorithms that also authenticate and identify who is asking me what. Now, again, authorization and authentication need to be coming into the functional safety. That's a question, answer number 1. So what's the second question?
The second question is, can you explain how to achieve the targeted security and safety level in adaptive Autosar platform?
Oh, yeah, quite a complicated question. Autosar, Autosar, from my point of view, is basically meant to cut across the different electronic control units, hardware and software, to be able to communicate seamlessly. Now, this is, let's say, if I use this definition of Autosar, Now, safety and security, definitely in the adaptive one. Now, again, Autosar is basically something that is meant for seamless communication. Now, so that means basically it also will have to have similar considerations as functional safety. Now, in security, it's all about who is talking and who is writing and who is listening. So same principle applies there as well. That means I can imagine there will have to be modifications given to these particular, the additional parameters that we're talking about.
Thank you.